Okay, here we go. Here we are again, and my little cat is walking around, so you might hear a meow every now and then. Oh, she's walking away. Okay, here we are with session number 56. We are beginning a new chapter, chapter 8, on page 138 in the text. All right, this chapter is called The Journey Back. All right, so let's just begin. All right, the first section is called The Direction of the Curriculum. And Jesus says, knowledge is not the motivation for learning this course. Peace is. This is the prerequisite for knowledge, only because those who are in conflict are not peaceful. Peace is the condition of knowledge, because it is the condition of the kingdom. Knowledge can be restored only when you meet its conditions. This is not a bargain made by God, who makes no bargains. It is merely the result of your misuse of his laws on behalf of an imaginary will that is not his. Knowledge is his will. If you are opposing his will, how can you have knowledge? I have told you what knowledge offers you. Perhaps you do not yet regard this as wholly desirable. If you did, you would not be so ready to throw it away when the ego asks for your allegiance. Okay? So this is knowledge is not the motivation. Peace is. Right? The first thing we need to attain, the first thing we need to allow to rise up in our awareness is peace. Because what we have chosen to believe is the choice of believing in separation brings conflict. All right? So we have chosen conflict, constant conflict. All right? So what needs to rise up in our awareness and our memories is peace. All right? Peace is the condition of knowledge, because it is the condition of the kingdom. In your true existence, peace is pervasive. I like to use the metaphor as peace is the fertile ground, right, from which all other experiences, so to speak, rise up. Right? The awareness of oneness, the awareness of safety, the awareness of bliss. All this is part of the knowledge of your reality. All right? Your true reality is knowledge of God and your relationship to God. Right? And it's all surrounded by peace. Okay? So what we achieve first, right, and that's what we're trying to do here in this experience, is achieve peace. All right? And that's one of the practices. You can use whatever words you want. You know that you're in conflict somehow. Right? There's resentment, there's fear, there's guilt, there's anger and all that. And so you realize you've chosen conflict. All right? Somehow you're in conflict. Whether you take responsibility for it or not is another question, but you're in conflict. Okay? So, and you can get out of it. All right? And what we always talk about is going to Holy Spirit, going to right mind. You can use the image of Jesus as your friend, your mentor, your guide, and ask, what does peace look like in this situation? All right? And that's the practice, really. All right? That's to get out of the conflict. All right? Because that's the motivation for learning this course is that you will be peaceful. All right? And the more you do it, the more you like it. All right? And you will reinforce it. All right? So, he says we've been misusing his laws. All right? This conflict is the result of misusing the laws of God, which is instead of extending love, what I'm doing is projecting guilt. All right? I believe I separated, so I feel automatically guilty. I feel guilty. I feel less than. I feel like I did something wrong. It's just something wrong with me. And then immediately comes the fear. Right? Guilt demands punishment. Right? So right behind the guilt comes the fear, and then the ego thought system and its nuttiness counsels us that the way to get rid of the guilt is to project it, throw it out onto somebody else. All right? So it's not me, it's you. So when that angry, vengeful deity comes around, all right, you can say, well, hey, it wasn't me. Okay, look over there, look what they did, look what they said. You know? And that's the way we move on through this experience here on earth, all right? Okay, until we catch it, all right, until it becomes very uncomfortable. You know, this experience this human experience becomes very uncomfortable. All right, if you feel like everything's going wrong, everything's going right, everything's fine, you know, there's probably no motivation to find a better way to deal with the world if you think everything's going along, you know, swimmingly, as they say. But once you get tired of the conflict, right, you ask. And Jesus says, I know what you really want. Right? He always says that. I know what you really want. And what you really want is peace. Okay? He says, I've told you what knowledge offers you, but perhaps you do not yet regard this as wholly desirable. All right? If you did, you would not be so ready to throw it away when the ego asks for your allegiance. All right? And we do. We cut back to the ego. You know, we just get used to doing that. So you have to get used to noticing, oh, I'm in that thought system again, that thought system of, you know, I got to get mine before you get yours. If you have it, you took it from me, I got to get it back. And, you know, don't cut in front of me. Don't take what I have. And all this, all of it, you know, I don't look right, you know, and it's endless. The self-criticism, the fear, it's just endless. All right? We're talking about anxiety in a group that I have. And, you know, people are, even in their later years, the anxiety that they started off with early in life, it follows them around. Right? Until we get, you know, at least mindful enough to say, wait a second, there has to be a different way of looking at this, okay? And we ask, help me to see this. Help me to see it through the eyes of peace. All right? And that's our motivation, is to get out of the constant conflict. All right? You'll see at one point Jesus says that we roam this earth uncertain, lonely, and in constant fear. Because that's the human condition. All right? And granted, there's other people that look like they're doing really great, and you know, a lot of people work very, very hard to cover up the idea that they're uncertain, they're lonely, and they're anxious, at least. Okay? So we ask for a better way, and for some of us, this is the answer. The Course in Miracles is the answer. All right? But the Course in Miracles has no secrets that are, you know, only for the Course in Miracles. It's universal truth. Okay? It's just universal truth. Jesus tells you right in the very beginning that a universal theology is impossible. It's like everybody can't belong to the same church. Everybody doesn't believe the same, doesn't have the same idea of God and reality. Okay, he says it's unrealistic, it's impossible. Okay, but you know, that universal truth, that universal thought, that's what has to be attained. Okay, if I could find it quickly, I will find it, but I don't think it's going to be quick, so you know, we'll go on my paraphrasing. All right, a universal theology is impossible. Okay, but the universal correction is necessary. Okay, that's what's necessary. So I have managed to lose my place. Okay, here we go. So, let's see. You are not asked to dispel your hallucinations alone. Okay? And the ego's voice is an hallucination. That voice that says you are separated from God, that's a hallucination, he says. All right, so you can't expect the ego to say, look, just kidding, I'm not real, I'm really, you know, I'm not real. All right, go back to where you were. All right, he says, but you're not expected to dispel your hallucinations by yourself. So in other words, you're not expected to make all these corrections, the way I see things, the way I see people, the way I interpret situations. All right, he says, you're not asked to do that by yourself. All right, you're merely asked to evaluate them in terms of their results to you. Okay, if you do not want them on the basis of loss of peace, they will be removed. They will be removed from your mind for you. This is in paragraph 2. I forgot to mention. Okay? So paragraph 2, the distractions of the ego may seem to interfere with your learning, but the ego has no power to distract you unless you give it the power to do so. All right? And we give it the power by going on mindlessly through the day. We just stay busy, you know, keep doing what you're doing, you know, never questioning the results of what's going on. All right? He says you're not asked to correct things by yourself. You're just merely asked to evaluate them in terms of results to you. Are you peaceful? All right? Is peace in your awareness? All right? If not, Jesus can help you. Holy Spirit helps you. All right, your higher self will help you. Just you stop and call on it. And in that instant, everything, time, space, hallucinations fall away in that instant. Okay? So if you do not want them on the basis of loss of peace, they will be removed from your mind for you. Paragraph 3. Every response to the ego is a call to war. And war does deprive you of peace. Yet in this war, there is no opponent. There is the reinterpretation of reality. All right? This is the reinterpretation of reality that you must make to secure peace, and the only one you need ever make. Those whom you perceive as opponents are part of your peace, which you are giving up by attacking them. How can you have what you give up? You share to have, but you do not give it up yourself. When you give up peace, you are excluding yourself from it. This is a condition so alien to the kingdom that you cannot understand the state that prevails within it. All right, so when I turn my back on my true existence, which is peace, all right, he says you're in the conflict, and it's a state that's so alien, all right, to the kingdom that you can't understand the state that prevails within it, which is peace. When we turn our back on peace and we think that we're separated, he says you can't even understand peace anymore. Okay? So he says every response to the ego is a call to war. All right? So right at the very inception of the tiny mad idea that said, well, maybe I could be separate. Maybe I could be individual. All right? That was a call to war. All right? Now there's a war on oneness. You destroy the oneness. All right? You rebel against God, so to speak. Okay? And that starts the whole thing. You know, there's that war. You know? So now we have to run away from the perceived enemy, all right, who's coming to get us. All right? But he says, look, it says this war deprives you of peace. He goes, yet there is no opponent, right? It's made up, right? You couldn't separate. You never separated, right? You made the whole thing up. And because the mind is so powerful, I mean, here it is. It's in 3D. You know, we made this all up. All right? And then to remind you, he says, you're not asked to dispel these hallucinations by yourself. You ask, help me. Help me to see this correctly. Help me see it correctly. Right? And he reminds us here that those whom you perceive as opponents are part of your peace. Right? So we're announcing the ideas of forgiveness. All right? In the Course's presentation of forgiveness. Okay, we're starting to hear that coming. It's coming, right? Because he says your opponents, those that you perceive as your opponents, are part of your peace. All right, and you're giving up your peace by attacking them. All right, this is how can you have what you give up? You give up your peace by attacking, all right, even if it's little criticisms, you know, even if it's little criticisms. And then there's the major things as we just go through your daily day. Oh, I hate that. I don't like him. I don't like her. I don't like his belief systems. I don't like this about him. And, I don't like the way they dress. I don't like the way they don't say thank you, whatever. There's a million things. Right? You're giving up your peace. All right? by projecting onto them, by attacking them. And he says, how can you have what you give up? He says, you have to share things in order to have it. You have to share peace in order to have it. You have to share love in order to have it. All right? And all those words are really part of the same concept. You have to extend the kingdom in order to have it. All right? And we get help doing that. We say, help me to see correctly. Right? That suggests that it implies that, even though at this point I'm so angry with this person, all right, I'm willing to see it otherwise. I'm willing to see correctly. All right? And that means I'm willing to see the other person's innocence. I'm willing to go past the disguise that they're wearing. Okay? I'm willing to go past the mistake they're making, all right, by thinking they're separated from love. All right? And I'm willing to see it correctly. All right? So you have to share. To share, you get when you give, all right? You share to have, but you do not give it up yourself, all right? When you give up peace, you are excluding yourself from it, right? This is a condition so alien to the kingdom that you cannot understand the state that prevails within it. You can't understand that state of oneness when you give up the peace, okay? Paragraph 4. Your past learning must have taught you the wrong things, simply because it has not made you happy. On this basis alone, its value should be questioned. If learning aims at change, and this is always its purpose, are you satisfied with the changes your learning has brought you? Dissatisfaction with learning outcomes is a sign of learning failure, since it means that you did not get what you wanted. Okay? So your past learning have taught you the wrong things because it hasn't made you happy. Let's go back to the idea of one problem, one solution. One problem. I taught myself that I had separated from the oneness. All right? I taught myself. I separated, and now I taught myself to deal with it. I have to make all kinds of adjustments. And then he says, well, did it make you happy? Did it make you happy? Those of you who walk around uncertain, lonely, and in constant fear? Is that what makes you happy? All right. So he says, if you're not happy, then learning didn't bring you what you wanted. There's a learning failure. So are you satisfied with the changes your learning has brought you? All right. This constant conflict, interspersed with, little oases of laughing and fooling around, perhaps, periods when we think this is wonderful, isn't life great, But those are little oases. In the long run, it's pretty difficult. All right. So he says, are you satisfied with the changes? All right. You changed from being part of oneness to thinking you're an individual. All right. This is, as the saying few years ago was, how did that work out for you? You know, are you happy? You know, are you better off now? All right, so he says dissatisfaction with learning outcomes is a sign of learning failure, since it means that you did not get what you wanted. Right? You didn't. That individuality didn't get you what you wanted. That belief that you split from oneness, really, it didn't make you happy. All right. So, paragraph number 5. The curriculum of the atonement is the opposite of the curriculum you have established for yourself, but so is its outcome. If the outcome of yours has made you unhappy, and if you want a different one, a change in the curriculum is obviously necessary. The first change to be introduced is a change in direction. A meaningful curriculum cannot be inconsistent. If it is planned by two teachers, each believing in diametrically opposed ideas, it cannot be integrated. If it is carried out by these two teachers simultaneously, each one merely interferes with the other. This leads to fluctuation, but not to change. The volatile have no direction. They cannot choose one because they cannot relinquish the other, even if it does not exist. Their conflicted curriculum teaches them that all directions exist and gives them no rationale for choice. Okay? So this section being called the direction of the curriculum, all right? He tells us the curriculum of the atonement is the opposite of the curriculum you have established for yourself. Okay? But so is its outcome. So the curriculum of the atonement, right, is to get all those lessons that will teach us that we never left the oneness, that we are not guilty. All right, we're not guilty of destroying oneness. We never left. We are at home in God. We exist in the mind of God. That is our reality. So he says that this curriculum is opposite of the one you've established for yourself. And that is the curriculum of the ego, which uses everything to teach us that you separated from love, you separated from God. You left the oneness, all right? You're an individual now. You got to go get yours, all right? And all the lessons that we need to learn to maintain ourselves here. It's a hard knock life, as they say. Okay? So the curriculum of the ego is opposite the curriculum of the atonement, which is all these things now become classrooms to help us remember that we never left the mind of God. We never left our source. Okay? So the atonement is the opposite of the curriculum, okay? But so is its outcome. Right? The outcome of the atonement curriculum is remembrance of who you really are. Remembrance of your innocence and the fact that you never left the mind of God. Okay? That's the outcome. The outcome of the ego's curriculum is to constantly pound it into you that you're separated from love, you're separated from God, you're guilty, you deserve punishment, all right? And you got to get what you got to get, you know? Don't let anybody take anything from you, all that nonsense. You know? So if the outcome of yours has made you unhappy, and if you want a different one, a change in the curriculum is obviously necessary. All right, so he repeats it again, that idea. You know, if you're not happy with the classes that the ego presents, you need a change in the curriculum here. All right? The first change is a change in the direction. Okay? So the change in direction is that I'm going toward the realization of oneness, not away from it. All right? I'm not separating, I'm joining. My mind is not splitting, it's integrating, it's healing. All right, I'm going toward the oneness, not away from it. Okay? And this is a meaningful curriculum, has to be consistent. All right, it can't be inconsistent. Okay. So he says it can't be planned by two teachers. You can't listen to two teachers, because they're going to be teaching you the opposite things. One teacher is going to be teaching you oneness and how to see correctly. The other teacher is going to be showing you separation and sin, guilt, and fear. You did something wrong. All right? You're going to have to pay. All right? So if it's planned by if the curriculum is planned by two teachers, each believing in diametrically opposed ideas, all right? Atonement, ego, Holy Spirit, ego, all right? Oneness, separation. Okay, diametrically opposed ideas. All right? So if the curriculum is planned by two teachers, it can't be integrated. It cannot be integrated. Okay? If it is carried out by these two teachers simultaneously, each one merely interferes with the other. All right? This leads to fluctuation, but not change. All right? The volatile have no direction. Okay? If I'm volatile, I can jump off in any direction. Right? I can burst away. You know, fly off in this direction, fly off in that direction. So the volatile have no direction. All right, they just, all right, they cannot choose one or the other. All right, they cannot choose one because they cannot relinquish the other, even if it does not exist. All right, so we're volatile, we're confused, we have no direction because, it's like we want, there's something inside of us that wants the peace, but we can't let go. We're afraid to let go of the ego thought system. Okay? And he says, you can't relinquish the other, even if it doesn't exist. All right? Just throws that in there. The ego thought system doesn't exist. You never left. All right? That's the idea of the atonement. You never left the mind of God. All right? You're believing in an hallucination. All right? You're believing in the stuff that's all made up. All right? And the mind is that powerful that it makes it up, and it seems quite solid. Okay? Until the quantum physicists come along. All right? Until the physicists come in and tell you that there's spaces in between molecules and things like that. I might be wrong, but I might be using the wrong words, but things seem solid, they'll tell you, but it's not. And then they'll go on to tell you that the physical universe is quite possibly held together by thought. Okay. So even if that thought system is not real, the ego's thought system, he says we're reluctant to part with it. All right, we're like hoarders. Okay. So they cannot choose one because they cannot relinquish the other, even if it does not exist. Their conflicted curriculum teaches them that all directions exist, and it gives them no rationale for choice. All right? So we walk around confused. All right? And he says you just can't believe no man can serve two masters, as the old saying goes. All right? It's one or the other. It's one or the other. And, he tells us, so if you're listening to the ego as your guide, as your teacher, he says after a while you just have to start evaluating the results of that decision. Was it a good idea to go to that school? The ego school. Was it a good idea to enroll there? All right? Are you happy? Are you peaceful? Okay? If not, you change directions. You go down the street to the other school, the School of the Atonement. You can enroll in there. All right? And all the classes will be telling you, you're never separated from God. All right? So, paragraph 6. The total senselessness of such a curriculum must be fully recognized. All right? This is what we've been talking about. The total senselessness of the curriculum of the ego, which is constantly teaching us that you're separated from the oneness, you're separated from God. This is the total senselessness of that curriculum must be fully recognized before a real change in direction becomes possible. You cannot learn simultaneously from two teachers who are in total disagreement about everything. Their joint curriculum presents an impossible learning task. They are teaching you entirely different things in entirely different ways, which might be possible except that both are teaching you about yourself. Your reality is unaffected by both. But if you listen to both, your mind will be split about what your reality is. All right? If you remember that, we keep saying that, Jesus will remind you, your other life continues. No matter what you think is going on, all right? Your true reality, your true existence continues. All right? You are at home in God, dreaming of exile. Okay? So he says in that last sentence in paragraph 6, your reality is unaffected by both. Okay? By both teachers. All right? But if you listen to both, your mind will be split about what your reality is. One day, one day you're St. Francis. Next day you're Al Capone. You'll be confused. All right? He says you can't listen to both. And he says then you have to evaluate. You have to evaluate the results of, spending years in the University of the Ego. All right? I think it's called I University. Okay? And, evaluate those results. How do you feel? Are you peaceful? Okay? If not, we need to dedicate ourselves to the new curriculum. Okay? And when you find yourself fluctuating, find yourself going back, all right, to visit your friends in the cafeteria at the Ego University, you can pull yourself back and say, wait, I don't want to go there. I really want to be peaceful. All right? And then you call on your teacher. Show me how to be peaceful. All right? In this circumstance, whatever circumstance in which you find yourself, how can I be peaceful? All right? And that's the curriculum that we want. We want to be shown how to be peaceful, and we work our way into those, aha moments when you start to realize, oh, this is who I truly am. This is where I really want to be. All right? And we progress to the ultimate memory of who we are and where we are and what we are. Okay? So he says, you can't listen to two teachers. If they're teaching you entirely different things, and the ego is entirely the opposite of the atonement, the idea that you're never left. All right. So this is the direction of the curriculum of the course, is that we're going in the direction of the memory of who we are. Right? We're going in the direction of oneness. All right? Not in the direction of separation, scatteredness, and conflict. Okay, and so this chapter, correctly called The Journey Back, this is the beginning, all right, of the journey back. And we establish the direction we want to go in. We want to go toward oneness, the realization of oneness. Okay, and we'll see you soon with another lesson. All right? And bye now.